This is B of C Live, the video and podcast series of Business of Cannabis. Find out all that we do at businessofcannabis.com. Coming up on B of C Live, a conversation with Krista Raymer of Vetrina Group. This conversation was recorded as part of the Lift & Co Expo in Toronto in November. We wanted to connect with her to talk about cannabis retail density, and how the retail market in cannabis in Canada is shaking out. This is Krista Raymer from Vetrina Group. Krista Raymer, thanks for stopping by.
Jay, thank you for having me.
How many lifts have you been to?
Two.
Two? Vancouver?
One in Toronto and one in Vancouver.
The one in Vancouver was January 2020.
Yes.
It's my birthday, actually.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
So my birthday's coming back up.
Great.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. The big difference, a big difference. There's a lot of big differences.
There's a lot going on here.
One in particular is that from my house to here, to get to this trade show now, I go by 30 cannabis retailers, and I live in downtown Toronto.
I mean, the density just within a 1 kilometer radius of this venue is outrageous.
Yes.
Yes.
Especially because during COVID, there's basically nobody down here. But
Yes.
in my neighborhood, so I live in the west end of Toronto, and I would come here on Queen Street, and I go by a lot, which begs the question, you are a cannabis retail expert. You're a retail expert. You also work in cannabis retail. Is that? I mean, the question everybody in Toronto is asking, is that too many?
Well, what's the definition of too many?
Okay.
I think like when we look back historically and the amount of products that were available on the market, 100% it's been too many stores. The reality, though, is that we have a lot of new products coming to market. There's new opportunity to differentiate. Now it's going to be a game about how agile can we be and how effective are we at communicating with a specific customer base. We can't be everything to everyone.
People are trying to be everything to everybody. That's not a great recipe. I learned that from Krista Raymer.
It historically has worked, right? Like
yes.
For a period of time, we could reach our customers. We didn't need to differentiate. Customers were going to come to us. Now, customers have a lot of choice, a lot of options on the market, and a lot of different products to choose from once they're in a physical environment. So matching up the right customer and the right product in the right place is going to be the name of the game.
And that is hard.
That's been retail 101.
But it is hard because
Yes.
people, it is very challenging in non-cannabis retail to do all of those things and do it well and be consistent and find the right people. And that's where I want to go with this. Like, finding the right people to work in a place is very hard.
Yes.
And from an outside perspective who doesn't work in retail, like, you know it when you see it. It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. You know it when you see it at a restaurant, you know when you see it at a retail,
Yes.
you know when you see it at a department store, all of those things. How do you talk to retailers about building that core team, and then how do you get that team to like work as a unit?
The best environments are always going to be where everybody is aligned and shares some core values. The reality is though we have to be really specific with what those core values are. So if we try again and be too much for everybody and nothing has a lot of traction, it's not going to work.
Right.
If we think about the very best retail stores, they all have something in common, and everybody who's working there is on the same page with what we're trying to achieve. And right now, it's very, very fragmented. That needs to start at the interviewing process, and that comes through just in the interview to say whether we're going to do the buy-in and we're all on the same page. So we need to start at interviewing. We need to be better at interviewing and actually do better hiring, not necessarily because the talent isn't there, but getting the talent into the right environments to begin with.
Yeah, and put them in places to succeed.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you about other retail, non-cannabis retail. Like, what are some things when you think about like the people that do the hiring the best and the training the best, or do merchandising the best, or do in-store flow or signage? Like, when you think about, when you're describing so people understand what you're saying,
Yes.
well, what are the examples you tell them about?
I think like we're very quick to use Apple I mean, we've aesthetically used Apple in cannabis historically, whether that's right or wrong.
Right.
But from a hiring perspective, everybody there is sharing the same goal.
Yeah.
You walk in and you know you're going to have really great service, and that's been an expectation that has been set from the time that they interviewed. Lululemon is also a really good example where everybody shares some core values about their lifestyle.
Right.
Aritzia is another one where whether you like it or not, like it's very specific. You can probably see an employee from Aritzia from a mile away because they have shared core values around what is important to them.
Right.
And so it's those environments who have created and curated a team that can work together to send a very particular message. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of work around your brand ethos as well. And we're just not quite there yet.
Right. And can I ask a question why we're not quite there yet? Is it because it's difficult to get up and opened? It's difficult to start up anyway.
Yes.
Difficult in a regulated environment. It's a very expensive, long, lengthy, torturous process to get to day one.
Yes.
And so like to put emphasis on anything else than door opening seems like frivolous or like second most important.
Second thought, yeah.
But then it becomes the absolute most important on day one. Like
yes.
that's a very
the moment
difficult,
that you open the door.
It's a very difficult transition.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you spend a lot of time thinking about the regulatory constraints or issues with banking to be able to get the doors open. Once you've got through all of those hurdles, then you open the doors and now your customers expect to see a brand and you haven't spent the time baking the brand yet. And so then we kind of go backwards and try and get those pieces
Reverse
together.
engineer,
but we've already hired a team.
Right.
So now
and we already built the place and the actual
so now
physical.
What do we do, right? And that's where all of the brand pieces don't feel consistent and where we're missing that like look and feel both from an experience as well as aesthetics. And so if we spent more time thinking around brand early, that will help drive all of the other decisions. So we can be very clear with what our next actions need to be if we're thinking first saying, yes, okay, we're fun first. Everything that we need to do needs to be fun.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
From people to place to setup to name to all those things.
Yes. Yeah.
You're good at what you do.
We've been doing it for a while.
I know.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to, I'm trying to be patronizing. Like, I just feel like, and people are finding it. Like, I'm not saying people aren't working with you, but if they bring you in earlier, they would be better from day one because they brought you in on day minus 100.
It's always easier to start the framework and then to try and go back and change the frame.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a new industry.
Yeah.
We're all still trying to figure it out. Like, we know a lot of things about retail, and some of those have played out very clearly in cannabis, and some of them haven't.
Can I ask you another question? Because we also, like some of these retailers have been open a number of years, and in traditional retail as well, it's never stagnant. Like it's very rarely a retail environment stays the same forever.
No.
Like how do you think about the evolution of a brand, even a very successful retailer, how to constantly be fresh because that's what consumers want? How do you think about that when you're talking to retailers?
Well, it's kind of going to go back to those core values. And then how does it evolve and change with the customer? So I'll give an example. We didn't have edibles when the stores opened. We now have edibles. And actually moving forwards, we're going to have edibles that can be subcategorized into things like gummies and confectionery chocolates, as well as like dried fruit, for example. And so within that is going to evolve and change. We need to understand how all of those pieces relate to our specific customer. So all of the decisions that I'm going to make around inventory and assortment and the way that it's merchandised and the way that my team talks about the product with the customer is going to need to evolve and change. But at the very end of it, if we're fun, then it would always come back to we're fun first.
Right. There is some home-based message or home-based strategy and approach.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I like talking to you. I learn a lot. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
And by the time this rolls, we will already done this, but we're also going to have you next week for an event we're doing around Retail Series, which has been a great series. I've learned a ton, but I think retailers who are coming, whether they are early in the timeline or like open already, are learning a ton. So thank you for your partnership on that as well.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me.
That was Krista Raymer of Vetrina Group talking all things cannabis retail in Canada. If you like this program, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you heard the show. It helps support the work we do. We're able to do what we do because of ongoing partnerships with Alterna Savings, Cannabis at Work, Cannabis Benchmarks, Can Delta, Gallagher, Headset, and Torque and Main. Find out all that we do at businessofcannabis.com.